LJ, awesome to catch up, man. So today we're going to talk a bit about, developer branding. Obviously we're in Queensland right now. There's a whole bunch of uncertainty around the builder market. What do you think developers should be thinking about in terms of the role their own brand should play within the kind of broader project marketing space?
Yeah, I think that's a great question and a great opportunity right now given the market. I think now more than ever, the most important thing is to buyers is the credibility. Like you said, the certainty around the builder, the certainty around the developer. And I think it presents an opportunity for the developer to focus on their brand and how they position themselves. Previously, in my experience, it's been very much focused on the project, how the project's going to launch in the market and not really telling the story of who the developer is. Whereas now we're working with developers to build out their brand, their credibility, their story, put a face to the brand. I think it's kind of been one of those industries that's a bit shady behind closed doors. No one really kind of knew what was going on behind the scenes, and developers, predominantly kind of got a bad name.
The evil developer. It's kind of like, they're kind of almost like the supervillain kind of thing, but at like a community level where, so many of them were these faceless companies that had no brand. And often they leverage like a project marketing name as the kind of like, brand leverage piece. But I think that's definitely changing.
Yes.
And I think, we're already seeing companies like Gurner, Greyer, Mirvac and Co. kind of be able to charge a premium for their product because people respect their brand.
Yeah, and they know who they are. Like, I think the really important part is, like you said, putting a face to the brand, telling the story. Most of these developers have been working in the industry for such a long time, and they are genuinely passionate about the communities that they're developing in and giving them an opportunity to showcase that. And, our role is to help them feel comfortable and confident to be able to put themselves and their brand out there into the market so that the buyers can get to know them, build confidence, build trust, and then in turn it makes that sales process for the project so much easier.
So there's this new wave of developers that are coming through that aren't like what you said in terms of hiding in these kind of evil towers and they're kind of in the shadows. They're actually kind of putting their face forward, like what you're saying, and attracting a premium. And that often is a result of, doing projects that don't just make sense for the buyers, but also, for the community as well.
Yeah, definitely. And we've got some great examples in Queensland right now, including this one at KTQ's site in Kira that we're here today. They've, made choices that aren't necessarily purely just for, commercial objectives. They've made choices that make sense for the community. For example, we've been coining the term underdeveloping and looking at opportunities where they can give back to the community and actually, demonstrate, not just say that they're giving to the community, but actually demonstrate ways to do that. So as an example here, there's been huge spaces left in the retail precinct for community spaces, art installations, village squares, and things that the community can enjoy for free. Now, commercially, that might not have made the most sense, but that is their genuine commitment to this local community in Kira. And there's lots of great examples in Queensland right now of developers doing that. And I think that's genuinely showing, they're putting their money where their mouth is. And I think the community will really resonate with that. And we are seeing that across the board, that the community and the buyers are so much more savvy. They kind of want to actually genuinely see. There's no just shiny taglines and, you can say you're doing it. They're actually interested in seeing and delivering on the results.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to say that it's kind of community centric, but actually giving a shit and doing the things that the community wants. Not every development's going to be welcomed by all people, but the reality is we need more housing to get built. And if developers have that kind of longer term view, like KTQ and like a bunch of other developers, where they don't just think about a project in isolation, which was kind of the way it was, back in the day with the evil developer vibes. It was now kind of more like, well, if I'm going to be I want to build a project that I'm going to have my name attached to, and I don't want to have a shit development that everybody hates.
Yeah.
Not only that, but it's also having, development 2, 3, 4, 5 being more successful.
And that's the foresight that we're seeing more than ever now. And when we're working with developers, we're talking them through, okay, how does this impact, like you said, the next 2, 3, 4 developments? And where we might take a slight hit on the first one, we are seeing it pay dividends through the second and third projects. In terms of, building the consumer, but building that database, building buyers for the second project, we're seeing like much higher ROI on their investment, rather than it just being like, did that project sell or not, and that's the only measure of success.
100%. And so in terms of some what are some practical things, like when you're sitting down with a developer today, what types of things do you think they should be thinking about if they've kind of really been project led previously, and now they're kind of going into they want to really emphasize the developer brand to begin attracting the premium and also being a better, of service to the community. What types of things should they, be thinking about to kind of get started in that direction?
Yeah. One thing that we start the process, because typically, the developer may not have a marketing budget per se set to one side just for the developer brand. So we work alongside them to carve out opportunities and spend within each project budget to then spend on the developer brand, which I think is normally the first question, where's this going to come from? How do we fund it? It doesn't really necessarily fit into their budget and plans at the start. So we find an opportunity to do that. And if we're using the budget efficiently for the project, we typically can take some of that out to build on the developer brand. And I think first and foremost, it sounds really simple, but some developers, at this point still don't have even a website or a customer facing brand. We like to start at the kind of grassroots and work with the developers to build their brand, build the website, to be able to have a platform to tell the story. That's kind of the starting point. And then if they're already at that point or they're moving on from that point, I think it's around giving access behind the scenes. We've seen an absolute explosion of, like this type of thing, candid content, interviews, behind the scenes. Consumers don't just want to see the shiny end product. I think they want to go on the journey. They want to be able to see, and with the interest in kind of reality TV and seeing building shows and renovation shows, I think developers can take the lead from that in terms of giving all the access behind the scenes and seeing how long it actually takes, the long process of developing the site, all of the detailed design, the architects, the interiors, it's such a long process. And I think if consumers get to start to see all of the time and energy and effort that goes into the developments and not just these high price tags at the end, they start to come on the journey with you and see the value and understand the offering. So I think giving more access rather than just the kind of shiny render at the end is a great way for developers to do it and to build a personal profile. So for the actual developer themselves, if they feel comfortable sharing their own personal vision and their own personal story, that really connects and resonates with the buyers.
100%, we now track every new development in Australia, but again, we can only, update our audience based on the updates that, we're able to gather. And we think that while we can provide that kind of high level data, for example, when construction starts or finishes or a builder's appointed and the like, and we've sent out 6 million of those notifications over the last 24 months to do that. But really, we think that that's just the start, and really the developer telling their story, just like you're saying, where it's kind of taking photos of the site, showing the progress that's being updated, and as you say, kind of introducing the people behind the project and the thought that's going in. That's the way to kind of move beyond that kind of superficial relationship and begin to really build trust with the audience.
And I think it also starts to build those consumers to be brand ambassadors or custodians of that developer brand. I'm sure the ideal scenario is they want a database of clients who are waiting for their next project to come online, and that's not going to happen unless you take them on that journey and take that longer term view. I think I'm most passionate about the longer term work we do with our clients. Like, designing and marketing a project is great, but that longer term work we do to build out the customer experience is really rewarding. And I think the way in which developers are going to be able to stand the test of time through these tougher markets.
100%. And I think what often happens is when the market is a bit tougher, we often see a bit of an exodus out of the market where there are fewer developers, but the ones that really kind of look through the cycle and continue developing are often the ones, obviously the bigger guys often, but also the ones that do invest in the brand stuff. And I think for those developers that are looking to kind of not be one of the evil developers hiding behind the shadows and really bringing themselves to the fore in terms of that communication, I think they're going to be the ones that stand the test of time over the next 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah, definitely.
So when developers are putting together kind of a media budget, there's so many different choices, whether portals or print or whatever it might be. How do you help them kind of make those decisions and manage the trade-offs?
Yeah, that's actually one of my favourite parts to be involved with, is the strategy around the media spend, the advertising. We spend a lot of time working on the below the line strategy, first positioning the project and then the above the line strategy. And I think having partners like Urban who can give us real-time data, and it allows us to reverse engineer the budget, which is really powerful. I think traditionally it was always done in a way that it was just a generic percentage of the total GR, and that was left to sales and marketing. Now with this level of data, we're able to really drill down to the cost per sale, the cost per lead, conversion rates in the market and provide a really tangible budget that talks to, you know, how and where they should spend their money to get the most ROI on their spend.
And what types of metrics do you think developers should be looking at when it comes to, you know, measuring the performance of various, you know, media and marketing investments?
I think looking at the cost per lead and the conversion of the leads is really important, but not only that, the actual quality of the leads, because there's so many platforms that will drive volume, and you know, quantity of leads doesn't really equate to anything, but the quality of the leads, so ensuring that you've got leads that have got qualified contact details, they've gone through a number of questions, that just makes the sales team's job and ultimately the sales process so much easier and so much more efficient.
100%. I think often people, you know, some of the other portals, they focus on how large is the audience, but at the end of the day, large audience doesn't equal ROI necessarily. Yeah. And I think the more leads that an agent has to manage in order to make the same amount of sales, there's actually a hidden cost there for the agent, because no one's working for free. If the agent has to make 5 times as many phone calls to get the same amount of sales, there's a real cost attached to that.
100%, I could not agree more, and I find that to be one of the most frustrating things in the whole process, is trying to explain and educate in that space in regards to, you know, the difference between getting 5,000 leads versus 500 of quality. Reduces the sales team's time. It allows them to focus on the leads that they know that are going to convert to an appointment. And ultimately, you know, it still costs to gain those 5,000 leads. So, you know, making sure that budget is actually working hard and every dollar's accounted for is something I'm really passionate about.